Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. And I know that I should probably be talking about what is going on in Ferguson, Missouri. But there is other news from around the world. And one of the things that I have been paying attention to the last several months is out of Israel. Actually, kind of Israel, kind of Palestine, kind of Egypt. And by that, I obviously am referring to the Israeli war against Gaza. And there are peace talks that have been going on in Cairo, Egypt. And apparently, a couple of days ago, a draft of the terms for a ceasefire were leaked to the media. And so I've got a couple of articles here from antiwar.com that I will just go ahead and jump into. The first one is, of course, about the draft terms from a couple of days ago. And then there's an update from yesterday about a truce is coming, deal or no deal. So from antiwar.com, the draft terms of a long-term truce between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip were leaked by an Egyptian newspaper and revealed more or less the terms that have been discussed over the past several days. Under the terms of the deal, Israel would end its attack on the Strip and promise no future attacks on Gaza citizens. The Palestinians would also agree to stop firing rockets at Israel and not to build any more tunnels into Israel. The deal would also reopen the border crossings to allow the flow of aid from the West Bank into Gaza, increase the fishing zone, and pushing the deployment of Palestinian Authority forces into Gaza. Neither side has agreed to the deal yet, and Hamas expressed some displeasure about the pact not touching at all on their demands for a seaport overseen by the United Nations, saying that it gives Israel the upper hand. Mind you, the pact doesn't rule out a seaport, it simply doesn't address it at all. Islamic Jihad is not really included in the negotiations as a minor Gaza faction, though they say they believe a ceasefire is more or less a done deal, even if the pact isn't signed, as both sides seem to be de-escalating the situation in recent days. So, for those of you not aware about what has been going on in Israel and Gaza, the Israeli military, actually specifically the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, has been doing what I refer to as indiscriminate attacks in Gaza, to where they are lobbing missiles into civilian areas, killing large numbers of women and children. And the people in Gaza, specifically the people that are members of Hamas, have been firing rockets into Israel, specifically targeting the Israeli Defense Force. The number of civilians killed by Gazan rocket fire is minimal. I believe the last figure I saw had it at less than 5. The number of military personnel killed by rocket fire from people in Gaza is less than 100 members of the Israeli military have been killed by rocket fire from Gaza. 1 week ago, that number sat at 67, and I don't believe it has increased significantly. So the number is probably below 75, but let's just say below 100. The number of people in Gaza killed by rockets fired from the Israeli military is in the thousands. The number keeps growing almost every day, so it's really hard to keep track, but it is in the thousands. Last Sunday, that number just of civilians was around 1,700, with thousands more wounded. So the claim by the Israeli government is that Hamas is attacking Israel, when in actuality, Hamas is attempting to defend itself from attacks by the Israeli military. And there were several ceasefires within the past couple of weeks, one of which lasted 75 minutes. The ceasefire was broken, according to Hamas, when the Israeli military was firing on some of these tunnels that exist going between Gaza and Israel. Israel, on the other hand, says that no, we specified in the ceasefire that we could still fire on these tunnels. The ceasefire was broken when people in the tunnels returned fire on us. So it's one of those things to where both sides claims to be the victim. And really, there's only one side that is the victim, and you can just look at the body counts and see which side that is. So the other article here from antiwar.com, this came out yesterday. It said negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians continue on a Gaza truce, and though there wasn't much progress in the last day, both sides seem convinced that an end to the war is coming, whether through the Cairo deal or otherwise. The draft terms of the Cairo deal would open the Gaza border, broaden the Gaza fishing zone, and allow aid into the enclave. Hamas has expressed annoyance at the lack of a reference to their seaport demand, and while they are threatening a return to violence, the indications are it is just a negotiating tactic. Israel is feeling the pressure to make a deal too, with Israeli officials saying they believe that if the Cairo talks end without a pact, Western nations will impose a settlement on them through the UN Security Council. And that is something that the Israeli government does not want, because in recent weeks, the U.S. military has become less supportive of the Israeli, let's call it a bombardment of Gaza, to where the Israelis, even though they get billions of dollars annually in U.S. military aid, they decided to simply take weaponry out of the Pentagon stockpile in the country. And this was done without the knowledge or permission of the Pentagon. So essentially, the Israeli military was stealing weapons from the U.S. government, who just gives them weapons. So it's really difficult to steal from someone that gives you pretty much everything you want, but that's what the Israeli government has done, thus slightly angering the U.S. government. So if this does go before the UN Security Council, chances are it will not be vetoed by the U.S. government, and Israel doesn't really want that to happen. So they pretty much have to wind up coming to an agreement in Cairo. The article here from antiwar.com continues. It says, from a public relations standpoint, Israel would likely prefer to say they reached a deal on their own rather than having one thrust on them by the UN. The terms of either deal will likely be more than the cabinet hawks want. Ultimately, the seaport probably won't be enough to kill the Cairo deal, though Hamas may manage to get at least some promise to revisit the issue at some point in the future. In the end, both sides want to have a pact they can sell as a victory, but there isn't much appetite to go back into war. And that's what I like to hear, is that there's not much appetite for war, and hopefully the people of Gaza can have peace sooner rather than later. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. And one thing that you can do to help support this show and other shows produced by FPP Radio, those other shows include the daily 5-minute newscast, FPP Radio News, and the weekly FPP Freedom Minute. One thing that you can do to help support this show and those is when you shop, just take a couple of extra seconds, head over to shop.fppradio.com. You can still go to Amazon. You can get your free shipping on orders over $35, or you could spend Bitcoin and buy directly from me, and all Bitcoin orders get 5% off. There are other things that you can do, other affiliate links that are there at shop.fppradio.com. Coinbase and ExpressCoin, two very good places where you can get Bitcoin. ExpressCoin also allows you to purchase Litecoin and Dogecoin, and you can do so by using a credit union service center or check, money order, couple other things like that. Of course, you do need a wallet, and Coinbase offers wallet services absolutely free if you're just using the wallet. You can also purchase gold and or silver or other metals from Amagi Metals using the affiliate link that is on the website there, and buy some web hosting or register a domain through Namecheap. Namecheap and Amagi Metals, of course, do accept Bitcoin. And if you're looking for phone service, I've got an affiliate agreement with Virgin Mobile. Unfortunately, at this time, they don't accept Bitcoin. But any purchase that you make from any of my affiliates does certainly help me out. So when you shop, go to shop.fppradio.com. Takes just a couple extra seconds, but helps out the show. Again, shop.fppradio.com. So I've got a story here out of California. And yes, I know California is known for being a weird kind of place. And it's one reason, because California is a weird place. And it's also a very large bureaucratic place. It's one reason I support the 6 Californias proposal that will be on the ballot there in California in 2 more years. And, hopefully turning California into 6 states might reduce some of the bureaucracy a little bit. And it will definitely make each of the Californias less big. But there is a proposal in Sacramento, and they actually got the idea because of I guess it was a proposal that wound up getting enforced in Los Angeles. So the story here from Reason.com says, when Los Angeles enacted a rule requiring condom use in porn, the ostensible reason was to stop the spread of sexually transmitted infections. Never mind that this isn't really a problem in the up-and-up adult film industry, which has voluntarily adopted strict testing standards and boasts an on-set HIV transmission rate of 0 over the past decade. Los Angeles County was going to protect performers from condomless sex, whether anyone in porn wanted it or not. Since the measure's passage in 2012, the number of porn stars utilizing condoms has not really risen. I will say that again. The number of porn stars using condoms has not risen in any meaningful manner, but the number of porn films made in Los Angeles has plummeted. According to Film LA, the organization that issues local film production permits, there were around 480 adult films shot in Los Angeles County in 2012 before the law went into effect. In 2013, there were 40. That is over a 90% drop in the number of adult films filmed in Los Angeles County. So how does this affect the state as a whole? Well, I'm getting there. The Los Angeles Times editor Jim Newton wrote, "It's a safe bet to say that the world didn't lose its appetite for porn during that time. Instead, many of those who produce it are either moving outside the county or filming without permits." Newton spoke with Caden Cross, a porn actress and director who moved filming from Los Angeles to Ventura County to skirt the condom law. But she may be forced out of the state of California altogether if lawmakers in Sacramento have their way. State Assemblyman Isidore Hall is sponsoring a bill, AB 1576, a measure to take the condoms in porn requirement statewide, as well as implement new state-mandated testing and reporting requirements. It's under consideration by a Senate committee in the state of California, or rather it was at the beginning of this month. Given the way the condom law has played out in L.A., it's hard not to see this as a move by California legislators to unload its porn production hub status to places beyond state lines. At the least, it's a downright illogical and ineffective way to try and make porn safer, and Newton explains. At first blush, the requirement seems sensible. Who could oppose safe sex? But the effort to require condom use in adult films is misdirected. The porn business isn't the hub of AIDS or sexually transmitted infections. Moreover, asking people to wear condoms is one thing. Having the government order it and enforce it is another. And most important, it does not work. Measure B is taking a fairly safe business and pushing it underground, outside Los Angeles, and quite possibly into places that don't honor protocols put in place to protect adult film actors, which require that every performer be tested every 2 weeks for STIs and cleared for work only if the test is negative. Newton concluded, "It's time to accept that Measure B's impact has not been to encourage condom use, but it has been to encourage evasion and flight." For more on California's chaotic campaign, there is a video, but since this is an audio and not a video program, I will not be playing that. But I have posted a link to the article from Reason.com, so at your pleasure and discretion, you can head over there and watch the video that is, one would assume, safe for work since it is a YouTube video, and YouTube does not allow not safe for work content on their website. So one thing that I find rather interesting about this is the fact that they're basically trying to push something underground. And we'll talk about that when we come back, about whether or not it's safer to push things underground than to allow them to happen in public. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I read a story here from Reason.com about a bill out in California to basically take what was called Measure B in Los Angeles County that required all porn filmed in the county to mandate that the actors in the films wear condoms. The proposal is to take this statewide and require any porn filmed anywhere in the state of California to involve condom usage. And I said that it brought up a very good question. And actually, it was the editor of the LA Times that was quoted in the piece here that talked about, pushing the porn industry underground or into areas that will not necessarily respect the regulations that are in place. And I said that's a very good point, and I want to touch on that, about pushing things underground and how doing so makes things more dangerous, if you will. There are two industries right now that are probably the largest percentages of the black market, if you will. Those are drugs and prostitution. And the reason that those are in the black market in the vast majority of the country, if not, I dare say, the world, is because there are people that make the rules that others are then forced to live by, who think that they know better than everyone else. So they institute rules and say, oh, well, okay, this really, really dangerous drug, alcohol, is perfectly legal because, why, by golly, it's the thing that I like to drink on Friday nights and enjoy on the weekends. So I'm going to write laws saying that this is an okay drug. There's another drug, tobacco, that is still pretty bad, and I do enjoy a good stogie, so yeah, I will make sure that I allow this. And caffeine, who doesn't love caffeine, whether it's a large cup of coffee in the morning or a nice, refreshing Mountain Dew? That's caffeine, perfectly legal. But, oh no, you guys over there, you don't look like you vote. You definitely don't donate to my campaign, so cannabis, no, we're going to make that illegal because the people that use cannabis don't vote, so cannabis is illegal. And, of course, I'm overgeneralizing there as far as how things became illegal, but, again, it was basically because the people making the rules did not enjoy that substance. So, therefore, they made it illegal. And by making cannabis and cocaine and other substances illegal, instead of, as one was able to do barely over 100 years ago, and order these substances from the Sears catalog or go down to the corner drugstore and buy some cannabis or buy some cocaine. Not that I'm advocating the use of cocaine by any stretch of the imagination, but at one time it was perfectly legal to produce, buy, sell, possess, etc., the substances that are now in the black market. And because they got pushed from, well-regulated, and I don't even like the fact that they're regulated, but from, open businesses in public and in businesses that were up and up, shall we say, to where if you purchase an item from Walgreens and it is not what you are anticipating, then there are means by which to reconcile that. You can either call Walgreens corporate, and Walgreens corporate could tell you, okay, here's the policy on how to get made whole by the failure that we had. Or you could also, go another direction and just go file a lawsuit. And then Walgreens corporate gets taken into court, and then you state your case, and then they state theirs, and then a judge decides. Well, if a drug deal goes bad, you don't have those recourses to take. You can't, well, I guess you could, if you wanted to, call up the supplier that's the person above the dealer and tell them, hey, your dealer screwed me over. I was supposed to have gotten this, and I got this other thing. And then the supplier could say, well, you know what? Too bad. You can't, under any circumstances, in most parts of the world, I'm sure that there is an exception here, but in the vast majority of interactions with a drug dealer, you cannot take that person to court and have a judge determine that, yes, indeed, you were screwed over on a drug deal. Now, I would really enjoy seeing the paperwork filing for such a scenario to where somebody does try to go to a court and admit, yes, I bought this illegal substance and I got less of it than what I had planned. And this guy is the one that sold it to me, so make him give me more of the illegal substance that neither one of us is supposed to possess. Please, Mr. Man in a muumuu. Because the reason I would love to see that filed is because I would love to be there in the hearing just to see the judge actually have his head literally explode all over the bench from not being able to process why he's hearing that case. Now, there's another industry that is equally underground and has become violent, and that is prostitution. And I realized that I never explained the violence of the drug war. And it's because you can't go through these supposedly peaceful means of reconciling, not that the courts are peaceful by any stretch of the imagination, because if you don't go to court and you're supposed to go to court, then they will throw you in jail. But being able to call up the corporate company and saying, hey, I had a problem at your store here in this town, and they possibly being able to fix it, the way things get fixed in the black market is not through peaceful resolution. And you don't call somebody up and say, hey, I got screwed over. And then that guy says, oh, okay, I'll make it right. Bullets get shot out of guns. People get stabbed. People get beaten severely. People die in the black market. That's how disputes get resolved in the black market. That's not how things get resolved in the up and up part of business. And it's because they don't have the means by which to try to be made whole in a supposedly peaceful civil manner. And same thing with the prostitution, because people are dealing with shady characters, and they're not shady because they are in the black market. Or rather, they're not in the black market because they're shady. It's shady because it is in the black market, if that makes any sense. And my fear is that if the bill here in California requiring condom usage goes into effect statewide, that you will see a lot more, shall we say, black market porn that really puts people at risk, and not just at risk of STIs, but also at risk of physical harm, if you will. Because there's the claim that, porn's bad because people are in sex slavery. And that is what would happen if it winds up going into the black market. Stay tuned. More Peace, Love, Liberty Radio is next on FPPRadio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at FPPRadio.com. And you heard me mention Coinbase earlier. Coinbase is an online Bitcoin wallet, but they are so much more. They also allow you to buy and sell Bitcoin by connecting a bank account to your Bitcoin wallet. They also offer merchant services, and it's the company that I use to process all of my Bitcoin payments. When you shop from my Bitcoin store, they're at shop.fppradio.com. It's also the company that is trusted by Overstock.com. That's the company that Dish Network or Dish TV, I forget what the official name of it is, but the satellite provider, Dish, it's who they're going to be using once they wind up taking Bitcoins later this year. There are over 30,000 companies that trust Coinbase. And I'm not appealing to the masses on this, but when there are that many people trusting a single Bitcoin payment processor and online wallet, and that's just companies. I believe they also have over 1 million consumer wallets. So you know that it is a trusted business when they are able to get that many customers and retain that many customers. So to get started at Coinbase, head on over to coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. Now, here's an interesting story, and occasionally I will talk about elections because those are things that happen and people pay attention to them. And every now and then, people will pay attention to a minor party candidate. I know it's rare when it happens, but apparently the Constitution Party candidate in Idaho for the gubernatorial race out there is making some waves, if you will. There's a story here from rawstory.com that says Idaho's far-right Constitution Party has ditched its nominee for governor, citing his support for same-sex marriage. Now, one would expect the Constitution Party to do such a thing, but there is a twist. The gubernatorial candidate or rather the person that had been the nominee for the Constitution Party for their governor's race, that candidate is gay. So it seems as though the Constitution Party of Idaho had absolutely no problem with a gay candidate until he came out publicly in support for same-sex marriage. The story from Raw Story says, According to Boise Weekly's City Desk blog, the party, which spun off from the Idaho GOP, was fine with its candidate's homosexuality, but broke with him and even tried to exorcise him. That's exorcise, as in what you do with a demon. Exorcise him when he expressed his support for a federal court's ruling overturning the state's ban on same-sex marriage. Tension between the party and its nominee came to a head at the party's state convention, which was held August 1st and 2nd in Cascade. The candidate, they only list the last name here. Pankey is the last name. They do not list the full name. The candidate was, hold on, I lost my place here. The candidate, Mr. Pankey, is a 63-year-old, claims to be a born-again Christian who is openly gay, but says he has been celibate since he accepted Christ. On May 20th, he wrote a letter to the Attorney General, Lawrence Wasden, in which he urged Wasden to comply with a federal court's ruling overturning Idaho's ban on same-sex marriage. The letter reads in part, As Idaho's only gay candidate for governor in 2014, I urge you to allow federal magistrate Candy Dell's order for same-sex marriage to stand. Allowing same-sex marriage is consistent with Idaho's fair and equal values. On May 23rd, Pankey went public with those views. 5 days later, he received an angry memo from Constitution Party Chairman Floyd Whitley. The letter writes, The publicly stated, albeit personally held, opinions of Mr. Pankey are an outright defiance of the clearly expressed platform of the Constitution Party of Idaho. Mr. Whitley wrote, This, since its inception of the party, has been clear as to its principled opposition to homosexual perversion. Pankey responded via email, writing, I have not breached any Constitution Party rules. Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail at the convention. They did not. Of the 15 party members present for the convention, the 8 voting members voted 6-2 to strip Pankey of the party's endorsement. However, the Idaho Secretary of State informed the party that it was too late to remove Pankey's name from the ballot. Whitley told the Spokane Spokesman Review his advocacy of homosexual marriage goes against everything the Constitution Party stands for. Pankey described the convention as a waste of time. It was really goofy. If I had to do it over again, I'd run as a Republican or an independent. One party member, Pankey said, Minister Scott Hensler, offered to perform an exorcism to drive out the candidate's support of same-sex marriage, although Whitley and Hensler dismissed the allegation as disturbed and phantasmagoric. Whitley despaired to the spokesman that this is sending the wrong message to voters about his party, which he said stands for limited government and fiscal responsibility, including a flat tax on businesses and limitations on the size of city and state governments. Now, it's interesting that the spokesman for the Constitution Party of Idaho says that he is for limited government and fiscal responsibility, except that we need to expand government into the contracts between two individuals if those two individuals wish to label their relationship as a marriage. We also, and this we is from the perspective of the Constitution Party of Idaho and what I know the Constitution Party to support. The Constitution Party supports fiscal responsibility, except when it comes to enforcing the drug war. The drug war is the only war that is never too big in the eyes of the Constitution Party. The Constitution Party, they're not really a fan of foreign intervention unless, of course, Congress declares war. But, we need to maintain the war on drugs, which was never officially declared as a war by the U.S. Congress. So would it really only be a military exercise? The war on drugs is not actually a war, just like Vietnam was not actually a war. It was military exercise. So it's a military exercise against drugs? Is that what the drug war is? Because, war's bad, okay? And the Constitution Party, obviously, they support the war on drugs, but they don't support the term war unless Congress authorizes. And there are other things in which the Constitution Party supports a larger government and not exactly fiscal responsibility, although they would say that, well, no, we have to, maintain funding for these government programs that we like prisons. Prisons are good in the mind of the Constitution Party, so, have to maintain funding for those, but we should cut back other things that the government does. So roll back Social Security, but keep the prison industrial complex. That does not really seem fiscally responsible to me, nor does it seem to be consistent in the claim of limited government. And what are they limiting the government to? Only being able to do those things that the government can actually wind up doing? When speaking to people that call themselves constitutionalists, I often get sort of annoyed by the lack of consistency in principles that they seem to have, because they think that documents written by men, they're flawless. No, they're documents. They're written by men. Stay tuned to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. More coming up in Hour 2. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while simultaneously continuing to create daily liberty media. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit GoFundMe.com/FPPCC. That's GoFundMe.com/FPPCC. welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. This is hour number 2, which means it's interview hour. Every now and then it means something else, but for the most part, hour number 2 is interview hour. My guest this week is none other than Mr. Eric Freerock. Although I don't know if I should call you Freerock or the name that you have decided to post on Facebook.
Really, it doesn't matter. At this point, I'm so open that everybody knows who I am, so it doesn't really matter.
And you are I think the creator of the Cop Block radio program that is heard on Wednesday nights on LRN and a couple other networks.
Yeah, we started it. Me and Adam started it back in, almost March of last year. So we've been going for a while. And
you have done a good bit of sort of activist type things other than just Cop Block Radio. There's like some film stuff. I don't know if any of that was necessarily activist-y things.
Well, I guess some of it is because I did all the, or at least organized all the filming of the Pork Fest videos, like the talks and whatnot. So that was a big thing. But now I'm doing, my new project is called Liberty Bits, and I've been taking like Free Talk Live and Peace News Now and cutting them up into smaller segments that are topic specific, because I noticed a lot of other news groups have taken advantage of the YouTube style, the world lives on 8-minute clips these days.
Yes.
So that's what I thought would be a good idea, to take Free Talk Live and break it out into these segments. So you could easily share them with your friends. If there's a topic that you wanted to share, you didn't have to share the whole 3-hour long, video. You could share this, one 10-minute section or something.
Well, most of the shows that are on LRN have, 10-minute segments, and there's 4 of those within an hour. So wouldn't it be easy to just tell people, listen to the second segment? Starts at...
Not with Free Talk Live, because Free Talk Live, they'll talk about one topic for about 3 minutes in the first hour, and they won't get back to it until the second hour, and then they'll talk for maybe another 5 minutes, and then there'll be some time in the third hour that they bring up some more about it. So they're all condensed into one section. And that seems to how it goes with a lot of the shows, too, because even Derek sometimes jumps around, not nearly as bad. But that was always kind of a pain, especially at Free Talk Live. They'd be like, talk for 5 minutes, and they get a phone call, and then they wouldn't come back to her for a while.
Right, well, because Free Talk Live is an open lines radio show, so that they do encourage people to call in, and they encourage people to change the subject.
Right, and then even between callers, because caller 1 might talk about one subject, and then caller 5 will go back to that subject. So it's kind of, it works out, because now I condense them all into one spot, and all the segments are together, and you can hear the whole topic that went throughout the show.
So how often are you doing this with Free Talk Live? Because Free Talk Live is a 7-day-per-week radio show.
I have done every day for the past 2 weeks straight. So I've been cutting up every day's show. So I haven't cut the past 2 days' shows worth yet, but I'll do that either tonight or tomorrow, and then I'll cut tonight's.
So that's a 3-hour show, including commercials. After commercials, it's like an hour, almost 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think, after all the commercials are taken out.
Technically, after commercials and on-air reads and just like jibber-jabbering about nothing, it comes down to about an hour and a half.
Okay, but how do you... You're still listening to like 2 hours of stuff to realize that it's an hour and a half of actual meat.
Kind of. Actually, with the video, it makes it a good cue, because I can watch as I flip through. I can see if one of them are holding a piece of paper that they're reading an on-air read. So I'm like, there's an on-air read. I find the beginning, find the end, cut it off, and move on. And for commercials, it's easy because you can just watch the waveform, and it's easy to find those.
Well, and then you also see that nobody is speaking into their microphone, and generally microphones are several feet away from their mouth during the commercials. But okay, so that's a 3-hour program going through to find out, like, here's the hour and a half of actual meat of the show. and then cutting that up. How long does it take you to actually wind up cutting up an episode of Free Talk Live?
So for one 3-hour show, I can cut it up in about an hour and a half.
Okay, so that's not as bad as what I was thinking.
Right. Yeah, it's not nearly... I've gotten it... After, like, the first couple times, I'm like, I kind of worked out a strategy on how to do this. I go through, rip out the commercials right away. It takes 10 minutes. Okay. And then I do the on-airs, and then I kind of, like, skim through. I bring up the Free Talk Live website. I see the topics that they hit and when they hit them, so I have a rough idea. I kind of skip through if I'm hearing the same caller, 3 minutes apart. I know they're still on the same topic, so I just go through, cut them there, and move on. So
okay,
I got it down pretty quick now.
Now, what's going to be interesting, though, is if a caller changes subject mid-call, that's going to totally throw your process off.
Well, I still, as I click through, you can still kind of tell what subject they're on as you hear, I hear like 3 seconds, then move on, 3 seconds, move on, 3 seconds, move on. You can kind of tell just by the words they're using if they've switched topic or not. And if I have a question, then I'll listen to the whole segment to figure out where I need to cut it.
And I'm just really impressed that you're saying it takes an hour and a half to create these Liberty bits out of a 3-hour radio show when that's about how long it takes me to produce a daily 5-minute newscast.
Yeah, it doesn't take that much time.
So, and the hour and a half, that's including the researching and writing the newscast, the recording, going through, editing out any times where I goof up saying a sentence or whatever, mispronounce a word I have to repeat. So it's about six and a half minutes to actually record 4 minutes of audio. And then another 10 minutes of editing that, and then adding in the commercials, and then saving it, and then getting it uploaded. Again, it's about an hour and a half process for a 5-minute thing. So I'm very impressed that you can condense 3 hours into these Liberty bits, and it takes you the same amount of time as what I'm spending.
Yeah, well, the workflow that I use, it's pretty much Adobe's workflow from Premiere. So once I have all the clips, I can send them out to a secondary, what they call encode, and it just encodes them. I can go back and edit other stuff while they're encoding in the background. So basically, whenever I'm doing stuff in Premiere, it stops encoding, and then when I take a break, it keeps encoding. So I don't lose any time having to sit around and wait for these things. They just go in the background and do what they need to do.
Okay, so I'm not really sure what you're talking about encoding, and I'm sure that there are other people that
export. When I export them,
okay,
the computer has to generate these files, so it sends it out to a secondary program that sits there and waits for available processor time, and when there's available time, it does what it needs to do, and when I start taking up processor time again, it puts it on hold and then it picks up where it left off, so I don't waste any time that way.
Okay, and that's something that's very interesting, and I know that there's somebody else that for the last, I'm not even sure how long it's been, probably 7-8 months, has been doing like a weekly digest for Free Talk Live,
right? Yep, in
podcast form, and I guess
that's got to take way more time than what I do, because I don't have to listen to every single segment in its entirety to figure out what I need to cut and what I don't.
Because this person, they're listening to 21 hours of Free Talk Live, and then pulling out like the best 1 hour of the show.
Right, I don't have to make those decisions, which is nice, because I'm just taking whatever came up, I'm going to upload it, whatever the topic was.
Yeah, so what sort of motivated you to create what you're calling Liberty Bits?
So, if anybody knows like the Young Turks, they're total socialist left-wing nuts, but they took advantage of the YouTube format, and I noticed nobody in the Liberty movement was doing that. And these two shows were probably the best ones to at least start with until something else comes along.
Okay, so I want to find out more about this, because I've watched some Young Turks, but I'm not entirely positive what it is you're talking about.
Sure.
The YouTube format. So we'll find out more about that when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Eric Freerock is my guest, and we've been talking about the latest project that you picked up a couple of weeks ago, where you're doing what you refer to as Liberty Bits. That's actually the YouTube channel that you have.
Right.
YouTube.com/LibertyBits. And you said that you got the idea from the Young Turks, to where they have taken advantage of the YouTube videos, something another.
Yeah, well, I just call it the YouTube format.
Yeah, the YouTube format. So what exactly is the YouTube format? Because I've seen some videos on YouTube that are like, 5 hours of Hypnotoad, 12 hours of Hypnotoad, some 1.5 hour long video of some guy playing a video game. So I don't really know what the YouTube format is.
Let's call it the original YouTube format, where your video couldn't be more than 10 minutes long.
Okay.
So basically the Young Turks kind of they're basically a YouTube built news organization. They're left wing, of course, but still they managed to pull this off. And how they basically became noticed is that they would, do their news clips, and they would upload just that one topic as its own clip. So they would do an hour-long show, but it would be split up into each individual topic. So, when you're searching YouTube for a certain topic, if you're searching for, say, Rand Paul, then you'll get the specific topic of, I have really funny ones from Free Talk Live about Rand Paul, especially one that got a name because of you. It was Rand Paul is a Republican who wants to do Republican-y things.
That's exactly what Rand Paul is.
Yes, so that's what I named. That's what I named that segment. So, but if Free Talk, if the video was called Free Talk Live, August 8th, 2014. Who the hell knows what the hell they talked about, or where they find it?
2-hour-long video that or actually the 3-hour-long video that gets uploaded by Free Talk Live, and then they have all the show topics listed in the description.
Right. So it's kind of messy to get around them sometimes. So basically what I saw the Young Turks do was do this short clip, topic specific, and if there's a new topic, it was a new clip. So it was a much more easily searchable, because YouTube isn't searching the comments so much,
right,
to figure out these things. So I'm trying to tag them as best I can so they can get better search results. And like I said, it's way easier to share a specific topic with your friends than share an entire episode of Free Talk Live. Like if you were talking with your friend about a specific subject like immigration or something, you could snag this one 8-minute clip from Free Talk Live and share it with them, or just share a relevant topic with everybody.
Right. And the way I am, if somebody sends me a link to a YouTube video and the video is over 15-ish minutes long, generally I'm not going to watch it.
Right.
Just because, if it's something where it's basically, able to be listened to as a podcast style thing, to where you can just listen to the audio and you don't have to see the accompanying video, then I'll let it play in the background while I do other things. But I don't necessarily have time to sit and watch the 15-minute video in the middle of the day while I'm doing things.
Right. The shorter the clip, the better. Because if it's 3 minutes, I'll waste 3 minutes. It's not a big deal. But yeah, 3 hours is kind of a long time to.
Well, and one thing that makes the Liberty Bits really good is you don't need the accompanying video.
True.
So you could, just like click Liberty Bits, play all, and then just listen to all of them, and you don't need to sit there and watch the video. You can continue doing whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, so now my next thing that I'm going to start doing within Liberty Bits is making playlists, because obviously the same topic comes up a lot.
Right.
So putting them all together in one longer playlist as time goes on and I'm cutting these every week, then those will expand out, and we'll have a repository of all the times Free Talk Live talk about immigration or Rand Paul.
And something else that you're doing, and you had mentioned this during the first segment, was the PorkFest videos you recorded. You were getting those put up on YouTube, and you are also getting those played on community access television.
Yeah, so a whole bunch of time slots have been opening up, but I managed to get, I have no idea how, 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. So this is like primo viewing time because it's the middle of the week. People aren't going out that night. This is the prime time they're channel surfing because it's after the nightly news. So that's kind of when they're flipping around. There's nothing good on until about 8 o'clock anyways.
And
so there you go. So
one thing that makes the local community access channel sort of very attractive is that it is one of the lower numbers. It's channel 8 on most of the cable.
Which is amazing.
In the area.
It's within like the typical broadcast channel band.
Right. And the television station in Manchester, which is the largest city in the state of New Hampshire and the only quote-unquote real TV station. There's another TV station, but it's one of those, like UHF sort of things.
Right.
But the only real TV station in New Hampshire is Channel 9.
Right.
So if somebody is watching the 5 o'clock news and then they start channel surfing after, the first channel they're coming to, if they hit that down button, is Cheshire TV.
Right.
So it makes Cheshire TV very attractive for that. And Cheshire TV is one of those community access television stations that actually has community support to where the community watches it because, hey, this is our television station. Because, again, as I mentioned, the only real TV station is in Manchester. And, hey, we've got a TV station in Keene, too.
And they almost are just reporting completely on, like, Manchester, Concord, Nashua stuff anyways. They rarely report stuff over here. So the Keene station is, basically narrowed down to the surrounding couple towns. So you got that. And I think Channel 8 is sandwiched basically by ABC and CBS.
Yeah, so it's right there in that area to where people are expecting, their network programming. And I know that the local, the city manager watches the community access television station. A lot of college kids watch it.
I found out that my grandparents watch it because they got mad at me for swearing on Black Sheep Rising.
And don't repeat on this show what you said on Black Sheep Rising, because unlike Black Sheep Rising, this show has a PG rating and is available on iHeartRadio. And one of the requirements for being on iHeartRadio is to not be profane.
I guess that's not going to work for Cop Block Radio then, because we earn our explicit tag from iTunes.
Wait, you have an explicit tag from iTunes?
iTunes requires you to have an explicit tag if you swear during your podcast.
Okay, so I want to find out when we come back. Tell me more about the Cop Block Radio program that you've been doing for quite a while now. So stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. We'll get back to Eric Freerock in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. Since 1977, Roberts and Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals so you can turn your profits into a long-term investment. And if you're like me, you bought some Bitcoin back when it was about $30 per Bitcoin. Now it's up in the 500-ish range. Bitcoin over the last couple of months has declined in price a little bit, but it's still up a good bit from $30 per Bitcoin. So unless you wound up spending all of those Bitcoin that you purchased when it was $30 per Bitcoin, you've got a little bit of profit that you can turn into a long-term stable investment. Call Roberts and Roberts Brokerage for knowledgeable advice on investing, and they'll even tell you how you can, again, turn your Bitcoin into gold and or silver. That telephone number is 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. My guest is Mr. Eric Freerock from the Cop Block Radio Show, also from Liberty Bits and the Liberty Chronicles. What's the name of the
Live Free or Die Chronicles?
Live Free or Die Chronicles. That's the weekly thing that you're running on the local community access television, and you have a Facebook page for that that I'm sure people could find.
For Liberty Bits? Oh, I have one for the Live Free or Die Chronicles, too. So both of them are, facebook.com/Liberty Bits, and then the other one is /Live Free or Die Chronicles.
And the only one that you actually have your own YouTube channel for is the Liberty Bits.
Because all the things that are going up on the Live Free or Die Chronicles are going up on the Free State Project's YouTube channel, so they're already going to be there, so I'm not going to duplicate it.
Right. And for the past 66 weeks, you have been doing the Cop Block radio show that is available at copblock.org/podcasts, plural. Make sure you put the S at the end of the word podcast. Otherwise, you just get the RSS feed, and it'll totally make your browser look all goofy.
Yeah, I gotta get in there and redirect podcasts to podcasts or vice versa, just so they're even. So,
tell us about the Cop Block radio show that you said has an explicit rating from iTunes.
It's pretty much a podcast dedicated to police accountability issues, police state stuff. It does have a liberty bend because we're all liberty-oriented people who are on the show. But though Cop Block is not specifically liberty-oriented,
right,
there are a lot of different political philosophies within the people who follow Cop Block. And we're almost to 1 million on the Facebook page.
There's a lot of leftists that are members of Cop Block because they are opposed to the militarization of the police. And there are some people from the right.
For the same reason.
Right, well, kind of for that reason, but also they think, well, no, cops are supposed to be good. So whenever a cop does something really awful, we need to, make sure that we let everybody know that he's just a bad apple. It's not that, the entire institution of law enforcement is corrupt. It's just one bad apple.
Yeah, but doesn't the saying go, one bad apple spoils the bunch?
Yes, it does.
But yeah, it's kind of strange, the overarching, philosophies, though I think as far as people who contribute the most, they're all pretty much liberty-oriented people. I only know of a couple who are soft left-wing. They're not very completely extremist. They're close to the liberty line, but they're still a little on the left. But for the most part, I think it's kind of a liberty message that we try to convey most of the time.
And I'm fairly certain that you guys have talked about the Ferguson, Missouri situation.
Yeah, actually, I wasn't on this week, and I haven't listened to this week's show yet. Dio, Derek J, and Scott were on last week, and apparently they talked about it a lot. They had the phone lines open and got a lot of calls, so I'm pretty sure that was a pretty heavy topic for this past week's show.
And I have been following the situation out there in Ferguson, Missouri, pretty much since it started. And part of the reason is because I'm doing a daily 5-minute newscast, and it's been in the news pretty much every day. I've only reported on it, I think, 3 out of the last 7 days.
The live Reddit feed is awesome. I think that's great.
I saw that on Tuesday, but I haven't paid attention to it since then. But one thing, there's actually 2 things. about what's going on in Ferguson that have really sort of disturbed me. Aside from the vast militarization of the police to where they brought in, these Bearcats and MRAPs and other basically tanks, and the captain of the Missouri Highway Patrol actually referred to them as tanks when mentioning that there was a curfew. He said, "We will not enforce it with tear gas. We will not enforce it with tanks." And lo and behold, the curfew was enforced with tear gas, to where 7 people were arrested after being, shot at with the tear gas canister, or actually several canisters, according to the media reports. And, of course, the captain says, "Well, we gave them every opportunity to comply with the curfew." But the thing that really disturbs me, one, that he just flat out lied, we're not going to use tear gas and tanks to enforce the curfew, and then did it. And 2, the fact that the media has been targeted in Ferguson, Missouri.
Yeah, that was crazy when they tear gassed the Al Jazeera TV crew who were trying to set up a live shot, and then started taking down their equipment. And of course, I heard in your 5-minute bit that the police said that they consented to let us help them take it down. It's like, yeah, right.
We were assisting them in moving their equipment with their consent. No. I'm fairly certain that they did not consent. The fact that they ran away from their equipment does not give you consent to touch their equipment. They ran away because you shot tear gas at them.
Yeah, and they're shooting rubber bullets and tear gas and all this stuff. It's like, okay, you are being protested because you are thugs, and then you do very thuggish things. So it's like, I guess they're probably on the right track that you guys are thugs.
Yeah, and then there were also the reporters, one from the Washington Post, one from the Huffington Post, who were working in a McDonald's, initially told they could stay in the McDonald's, but, quote, "we will not respond to any of your 911 calls," end quote. And then a little bit later, the police came in and told them, "You have to leave. Not through this exit, through that exit." And then as he turns around to go through the other exit, he winds up getting arrested for not leaving fast enough.
And how is that even possible? I mean, they were on private property. It's not like the manager was kicking them out, right? The manager wasn't kicking them out of the McDonald's. So what business is it of the police to kick them out of a McDonald's, out of a private business off of private property?
Well, they had kicked all of the customers out earlier in the night. And the media guy said, "We're media, we're here working, we're covering this story." And the cops initially said, "Yeah, okay, that's fine, but we won't respond to your 911 calls." Basically implying you're going to wind up getting shot and hurt and otherwise be put in danger. Don't come crying up. Remember when you were a kid and you would do something and your mom would say, "Don't come crying to me when you break your leg."
Right.
Same sort of thing.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
And then they decided to come back later. You know what? We don't want the media here. And now,
well, of course they don't, because they would expose them for what they are.
And now the FAA has a no-fly zone over the city of Ferguson, which means no helicopter coverage of what's going on. They don't want you to know what's going on in Ferguson.
What about
or
drones?
Anywhere else. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. My guest is Mr. Eric Freerock, a liberty media activist extraordinaire.
Sure, let's go with that.
I reserve that term for very few people,
well, that's
myself being one of them, and of course you, because you have been doing a lot of liberty media. And you are very good at what you do. You do a lot of the more visual stuff, the videos where I'm doing more audio and written. And, it's really good to see that people are taking, 3-hour programs and then putting up, here's 10 minutes where we talk about this. From Free Talk Live or from the 2-hour Derek J's Peace News Now. To where, here's, everything that was said on this topic on this day. And it's really good to have that available because, as you said earlier, it makes searching for something a lot easier, and then people are more willing to listen to like an 8-minute audio clip than try to find 8 minutes of audio. Okay, so begin at 23 minutes and 18 seconds, listen for about 3 minutes, and then skip ahead to 42 minutes. People aren't really going to do that.
Right.
So it's good to have it available in those, ingestible doses, if you will. And we've been talking about the goings-on in Ferguson, Missouri, and I had mentioned the no-fly zone, and you said, what about drones? Well, drones are banned by the FAA for commercial purposes.
Well, what I think should happen is some independent people who are not commercial in nature just fly their drones, stick it up on YouTube, and let the news use it for whatever they want.
Now, I like the concept of that, but what I could imagine happening after seeing, what happened to the Al Jazeera news crew who just happened to have been, too close for comfort for the police, where they got a tear gas canister shot at them and then had their equipment taken down. The television crew that captured that actually had a beanbag round fired at one of their camera guys because he got too close to the action. And, of course, there was never a, you need to back up, you need to go somewhere else before things were fired at them. So what I could foresee happening is if someone did have, one of these homemade drones, or even, one that you buy at Radio Shack for $50 that they slap a GoPro on, and they're flying it around, I could see that getting shot down by police.
Yeah, probably. Though I think maybe if you had like a fixed wing, just like a winged aircraft that actually flew at like 30 miles an hour or something, then they probably wouldn't be able to hit it. And if they were, they'd just be like shooting wildly into the air, which would be worth the footage alone, or worth that happening, because then they'd be like, these cops are just randomly firing into the air. Who the heck knows where these things are landing? And if they were shooting rubber bullets, they wouldn't be able to get anywhere near the stupid thing with any ballistic trajectory being accurate.
Yeah. And I do think that it would make for interesting video, but I don't see it being, very productive, other than making interesting video of, hey, distract the cops with a little flying thing. That just seems, counterproductive to
yeah,
me.
it would. I don't. Well, burning a gas station is counterproductive as well. So
it is. It's completely counterproductive, and
probably flying a drone is not nearly. It's probably neutral. It's probably not counterproductive. It's probably not productive either. It's probably more neutral than counterproductive.
Right. Well, if the point is to get video of cops shooting at something flying in the sky, well, you've served your purpose, but you're sort of annoying the cops, and I don't think that intentionally annoying people is good activism.
Yeah, but if you're flying a drone and they get annoyed, that's their problem. That's not your problem. That's their problem.
Right, but if the intent, and I always look at the intent. If the intent is to, hey, let's go see if we can annoy these cops, then you're doing it for that purpose.
Right. Well, if I was flying a drone to get camera footage, my intent would be to get footage of what's going on. What the cops do from that then, or even the protesters for that matter do, that's on them. That's not on me. I have nothing to do with that. I am just capturing what's happening, and that would be my intent. And since it wouldn't have been for commercial purposes, I could throw it online, and the news could use it however they want. Because
throw it online, but don't monetize the YouTube video, because then it does become for commercial purposes. And we know that the FAA cracks down on this because, well, the Washington Nationals baseball team back in the spring had one of their own drones flying around their spring training facility, taking pictures for their media guides. Because you want a nice photo of some guy getting ready to, catch a pop fly or whatever, and you can't really get that with a camera guy standing out in the middle of the field. So they had a drone flying over, taking action photos. and they got a cease and desist order from the FAA saying, you must cease and desist, blah, 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 rule number. And it's not even actually a rule. It's like some regulation that they're thinking about possibly implementing that never went through the actual implementation process.
Yeah, and even then, I don't think it would even matter anyways, because as far as I know, the FAA doesn't regulate anything under 300 feet. So if you're less than 300 feet in the air, the FAA has no say. That's what happened to Tom Zebra out in California when he flew his drone over the parking lot of the LAPD. And they were like, you're trespassing. And then they're like, well, I guess we'll have to call the FAA or something. Because he's like, this helicopter's flying over all the time. You mean they're not allowed to fly over the parking lot? And then a memo came out, said that they can fly drones because the FAA doesn't regulate anything under 300 feet.
Yeah,
so
it's
kind
one
of
of those interesting things to where there's actually been a lawsuit filed against the FAA for enforcing a regulation that's not an actual regulation because they don't have jurisdiction to regulate. And I will definitely keep an eye on that because I'm always interested in things that are put in place to sort of stifle the media.
Yeah, it's a total First Amendment issue right there. It's complete freedom of expression, freedom of the press. That's what you are doing. You are capturing images. How you capture them is not of consequence.
Yeah, and there was a bill here in New Hampshire where somebody who is a strong privacy advocate introduced a bill to prohibit drones from being flown if such device was used to stalk someone. And he defined that as taking more than one photo of someone. So, if you're, except for news purposes, and so I argued to the Senate committee, I was like, well, it depends on how broad or narrow you define news purpose, depends on how broad or narrow you define public event. And besides, one thing that's really strange about this law or this bill is that the Goodyear blimp can fly around taking photos of people as much as they want because there's people in that blimp. If they removed the people and flew it remotely, then it would be illegal.
Which is ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Whether it's manned or unmanned.
One photo, so video, that's, between 24 and 30 photos per second.
Right.
That's a lot of photos that you would take over the course of 10 minutes if you were flying over somebody.
Yeah, so basically, luckily it got shut down. The bill did not proceed out of the Senate.
I would hope not.
But the fact that it went through the state house here in New Hampshire is rather disturbing. But
well,
again,
it's not surprising, though. Disturbing and surprising are two different things. It's not surprising because that's what bureaucrats want to do. They want to control your life and want to make freedom of the press as hard as possible. So of course this is going to come up all the time because that's what they don't want to be accountable to anything, and they see this as some new tool that can be used to hold them accountable, and they are scared out of their pants.
Well, and the bill also applied to government agencies. So it applied equally to government agencies and to private individuals.
Where I would say it should exclusively apply to government agencies.
Right. Had it only applied to government agencies, I think it would have passed.
That would have been good.
Because New Hampshire's legislature also wound up passing the bill to prohibit the radar license plate scanner things where they just drive by and bleep, 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 scan everybody's stuff.
Those are scary.
You can find more of Eric Freerock at Liberty Bits on YouTube or Cop Block Radio at copblock.org. And, of course, tune in to this show again next week, fppradio.com.